Welcome to another episode of the House Husband Diaries. As always, I am your host, Carter C., and today we are talking about why I do not believe the chest is hidden in Yellowstone or the surrounding area. West Yellowstone, Montana, that area outside in Wyoming, just the Yellowstone general area that includes Wyoming and Montana. Now, where I'm going to start with this is basically I'm going to try to use logic that I'm going to repeat in other videos because to me they're almost ground rules for the search. Now, we can disagree on some of these. Ultimately, it's up to our own personal interpretation, which is fine. But I'm going to lay out sort of a logical progression of things that we know and then build on that in future videos. So with that with that introduction, what do we know? Forrest Fenn hid a treasure chest worth $1 million or more and wrote a poem to serve as a treasure map to find where the treasure is hidden, where the chest is hidden. We know that. We can all agree on that. Well, I guess some people may think that Forrest is pulling everybody's leg and actually didn't. But if you're involved in the chase, you believe that. Forrest Fenn also writes a book, a memoir, and includes the treasure map, saying that the book has hints, which in the book he actually says they're clues. So I think I've said this in another video, but in the dust jacket, it says, unlock the clues that are scattered among these pages. Scattered among these pages, not just on page 132 where the poem is. Unlock the clues that are scattered among these pages, and you can go home with a bronze chest. And then you go to page 133. It's sad that I know this, not in my notes. This is just from memory. It's sad or happy, depending on how you want to look at it. Top of page 133, immediately after the poem, there are also other subtle clues sprinkled in the stories. So everybody wants to talk about, oh, no, there's no clues throughout the book other than the poem. It's only subtle hints. And Forrest has said that in interviews over and over and over. He's said it a number of times. It's not clues, they're subtle hints. He may say that now in the interviews as the chase is blown up, but he had every opportunity to go through when editing and writing that book and then editing it to say that there were hints throughout the book that would help you with the clues. But in the dust jacket and on page 133 immediately after the poem, he says there are clues sprinkled and scattered. Just saying, there was an episode not too long ago, K-Pro Cow, Forrest in that documentary, The Cutting Room Floor, and he said, no, I didn't say, something there. I said they were in there, or I don't remember the exact, I didn't, like I said, this isn't on my notes, but I mean, the book says, and you got to go back to the book. I mean, he set this chase up, this hunt with the poem, hiding it very carefully, hiding the treasure chest very carefully, writing the poem very carefully in the book, that if he passed away, we would have enough information to find the treasure chest. And we keep hoping that he will slip up, but we've also gotten away from what he actually said in the book and in what he wrote in the poem. All right, so he writes a book as a memoir, right? He doesn't write he doesn't write just an autobiography and tell you everything. It's a memoir. It's got he just takes seemingly random stories, puts them in a book, calls it his memoir, and includes his treasure map. That was point number 2. Got off on an aside. Point 3. I start calling him F squared. I don't know if y'all do it. Instead of writing FF, I just write F to the second power. Maybe because I'm a dork. But F squared only prints 1,000 copies of the map/book. Right? So there's only 1,000 copies of this treasure map at the beginning. F squared only sells this book in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Right? And it says somewhere in the Rocky Mountains north of Santa Fe, right? Is that page 132, 133 as well? Like I said, this is not part of my... Yeah, page 131. It's in the mountains somewhere north of Santa Fe, is what he says. He printed 1,000 copies. And in the book, it says that there's only 1,000 of at this point. It's in the mountains somewhere north of Santa Fe. That's all we know. We can agree on all of this, right? So he only sells 1,000. He only prints 1,000 copies and only sells them in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So he's hidden this chest. He's written a poem, which is a treasure map. He's only printed 1,000 copies of the treasure map, and he only sells it in Santa Fe, New Mexico, telling people it's in the mountains north of Santa Fe. He doesn't even say Rocky Mountains, right? Page 131, I read it just said mountains, right? So Rocky Mountains came later. Yeah, it's in the mountains somewhere north of Santa Fe. That's it. It doesn't say Rocky Mountains in the book. It says mountains. Now, having said this off the cuff without doing my due diligence research, I'm going to have to go back after this video and actually see if I can find anywhere else that he talks about mountains and see if he says Rocky Mountains anywhere else in the book. So don't quote me that that's the only place, but at least one place right before he drops the poem, the treasure map on us, he says in the mountains north of Santa Fe. Okay. I'm just building my case with facts. I don't think we can disagree with any of this, right? I'm sure some of you will comment and find something to disagree with, but I'm telling you, you're dead wrong. Like, this is like irrefutable. Here's where it gets interesting. So we have all these facts about a treasure chest, about a treasure map, about the number of copies, and about where you can get those copies. Then you get the book, and obviously many have been printed since, but you get the book, and it's filled with childhood stories, trips to Yellowstone, fishing, a big story about Vietnam. There's a teeny tiny bit about his gallery and this lady named Olga, which also happens to have something to do with his gallery. And I think that's about it as far as mentioning Santa Fe. And obviously Temple, Texas, and there's some other things, right? So I built a case for New Mexico. I've already done a video on that, why I think it's in New Mexico. The first 4 points of this video are almost those same points. If I didn't say them as clearly, they're written out as clear as day. But then you get the book, and you're expecting something about New Mexico, and there's hardly anything. Almost nothing. Head scratcher. So why, if you're going to go to the trouble of collecting all of the treasure, putting it in a treasure chest, spending years writing a treasure map in the form of a poem, writing a memoir, a book to go with it, but then only printing 1,000 copies and only selling it in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and write all of your stories, or the vast majority of your stories about Yellowstone. I mean, is it because, one, he hid the treasure chest in or near Yellowstone and is aiding us in reading the poem, the treasure map, through the stories by saying, hey, you're from New Mexico because there's only 1,000 people, 1,000 books only sold in this one store in New Mexico. So most likely you're going to be from New Mexico. And I'm telling you through the stories, you got to go up to Yellowstone. Two, is he just sharing stories from his childhood and nothing more? It's just, hey, well, it's a memoir, and there's some embellishments, like from my last video, like embellishments or what have you, and really, I'm just putting a few aberrations in there, a few subtle hints, even though the book says clues. Maybe he's just sharing stories from his childhood, or some made up stories that are slightly embellished, or partly true, or somewhat true but not the whole truth. Or Forrest hid the treasure in New Mexico, and the childhood stories are either a distraction to get everybody to look in Yellowstone. It's a distraction as far as the location is concerned, and or the stories that he shares, it's not about the locations. The locations are a distraction. It's about life lessons, a bigger picture. And so it's easier to hide subtle hints if you take the locations and make them different. So you can say something about fishing, or you can say something about, going out into fields at Texas A&M, or fields in Cody, or in West Yellowstone to go after Cody the buffalo. And so you can hide subtle hints more easily when they pertain to a place in New Mexico if you're not writing all of your stories about your time in New Mexico. And now, if you have another idea of why all the stories would be about Yellowstone, or a lot of them would be about his time in Yellowstone, I would love to know. Again, the recap, the real quick three options that I see are: he hid the treasure chest in or near Yellowstone, and he's just telling us flat out, I'm telling you all about my time in Yellowstone because it's in Yellowstone or the surrounding area. Two, he's just saying, hey, it's a memoir, and I'm sharing all these stories because these are fun stories, and I just kind of want to put my story out there, and these are, silly things that happen, and there's nothing more. Or he hid the treasure chest in New Mexico, and he's trying to get across subtle hints, subtle clues, and subtle hints. And the way to do that is not to talk about the area where it's hidden, it's to talk about another area, and then you have to find parallels to the actual location. If you can come up with something else, let me know. So then I will say another reason I don't believe that the treasure chest is in Yellowstone is because everybody knows, I make, no bones about it. I live in North Carolina. I'm from North Carolina. This would be like me hiding a treasure in New Hampshire or Maine. Now, for those of you out on the West Coast or in the Western and the Rocky Mountain states, your states are much bigger. You already know that. Everybody knows that. You look at a map. However, on the East Coast, people just don't go like up to New Hampshire and Maine all the time from the South. I don't know about out West. That's a long haul. It's 800 plus miles. I had to get on Google Maps for this to make this analogy. And even if I had spent a lot of time up in Maine or New Hampshire in that area, I know Forrest has a plane, or did have a plane at the time. Like, I know he's a pilot. He was up on a board in Cody. Like, I get all that. I know all that. But if I were hiding it up there in Maine or New Hampshire, I would think that I would, if I only printed 1,000 copies of my treasure map, if I love that area so much and the people in that area so much, because you have to have connections if you spent that much time. And I know Forrest does. He has family that lives up in West Yellowstone in that area. So he has to know people. He's on boards with people. He knows local people in Wyoming. Would you not? I would. Would you not? I'm asking you, the YouTube community, would you not divide that 1,000 copies, find a local bookstore in each town and divide those copies, 250 or 333 copies, for Cody, Wyoming, for West Yellowstone and, Santa Fe and somewhere else. Why only sell them in North Carolina? If I hid the treasure in Maine or New Hampshire, why would I not split the 1,000 books, the original 1,000 copies, between a main bookstore in the search area or close to the search area and where I live in North Carolina? Why would I exclude the people up north if I hid it up there? Why would I exclude them from getting out off the couch and going to look for the treasure chest? I don't have an answer for that one. That is one of the biggest clues to me that it's hidden, or confirmation bias or confirmers for New Mexico. But I don't really have a dog in the fight. Like I said, I've never been out searching, and I've been to Yellowstone, West Yellowstone, twice in my life, and it's beautiful. Love Yellowstone, but when you look at those facts, I question why it would be in Wyoming or Montana. All right, next point. As I said in my last video, it hasn't dropped yet, so I can't wait to see what the comments are on that one. But as I said in my last video, Fenn enjoys messing with us. He relishes in the thought that what he's saying, the things that he's saying, that he's the only one who knows what he said. And he laughs on that K-Pro and Cow, documentary, the bit that they dropped. I'm telling you, he relishes. Why am I having such a hard time with that word today, folks? Relishes. Why do I want to add another syllable? He relishes in the fact that he's the only one that's thinking it, that he's telling people to go somewhere, and and then of course, I mean, if you want to bring in the quote of that we're overlooking, or people are overlooking New Mexico, does that mean go back to New Mexico? Yada yada yada. All right, and the last thing that I'll say, the reason why it's not in Yellowstone, and this has just been beat to death, so is why I put it as last, but it's a national park, and there's just no way he's hidden the treasure chest in a national park. There's no way that you're going to go through or put someone through that. And, that rigmarole of having to give the treasure chest up, and then who knows how long they would keep it. And then who knows, if they documented everything. It was just too much. Now, could it be outside of Yellowstone National Park, in West Yellowstone, somewhere else in Montana, somewhere else in Wyoming? Possibly. I don't discount it. I have a very small percentage chance that it is. In my opinion, it is less likely that it's up there, but it is a possibility. He does talk about it, and that's something that Mike and I are going to go through. And that live video may drop before. We'll have to see if we can get everything working out. It may drop before this video, so we may have already hashed out some of these thoughts. But I do believe that you could start somewhere. It is possible to start inside the park and go outside the park. My personal belief is that the search area is actually much smaller, and that you wouldn't start inside the park and go 10 miles or 50 miles or 3,000 miles or what have you. I think that the whole entire search area, the whole poem, is within 500 feet probably. maybe 1,000. I use 1,000 a lot of times as just sort of a safeguard, because if it's 700 feet, people would be like, see, it wasn't within 500 feet. You get my drift. You know what I mean? Like, people are talking 10 and 50 miles. I'm talking 500 feet, 700 feet, what have you. I think the whole thing is within a much smaller space than what the vast majority of searchers, at least the ones that are posting and the ones doing videos, think. So I think those are possibilities. However, with what I've laid out, my thought process, I just don't believe that the treasure chest is in or near Yellowstone National Park, whether that's in Montana or Wyoming. So I'm sure you guys have tons of thoughts and ideas of why I'm completely right, and you want to let me know that you agree with me. I'm also sure that there are probably many more of you that disagree with me, and feel free to let me know why. So thanks so much for watching this episode of the House Husband Diaries. As always, like, subscribe, do whatever you got to do. Don't like it, don't subscribe. Just keep sucking this content out of me. I enjoy doing it. I'm looking forward to some more videos with Mike from Treasures Galore, and hopefully with Rodney Greenway and anybody else. Let me know. Shoot me an email, carter@hhdiaries.com. And I'd love to do some collaborations, hear your thoughts. And who knows, maybe we'll get boots on the ground. I don't know if it'll be 2020, but maybe if it's not found this year, maybe I'll do boots on the ground, plan one for 2021, whether I have a solve or not. We'll see. Thanks so much for watching. Talk to you tomorrow.